I'm back. Now, having scared you witless last video about pathogens, here's the good news. We actually have an immune system. We have a system in our bodies that stops us from getting ill all the time. Clearly, if the world's full of pathogens, and it is, every surface you touch, your whole body, external and internal, is covered in these things, right? So we're constantly dealing with pathogens. But our immune system does a great job of actually keeping us well most of the time. Every once in a while we get a new disease we haven't seen before, or we just get overrun, we get run down and tired, and our immune system gets tired and we get a little bit ill for a while. So we have a number of layers to this immune system. And the first is the first level of defense. It's also called our non-specific, because it doesn't actually care what the pathogen is, it's just stopping things getting in. So the first part of this, I should tell you about specific. We also have a specific immunity, which has the ability to recognize different pathogens, remember them, and remember how to deal with them. And that's a really important thing. That's what vaccinations in the next video is all about. We've learned about that. So, I keep on jumping backwards. And the really important part of all of that system that we as higher evolved vertebrates have is this marker on our cells. So in the cell membrane, we've got a lovely cell membrane down here, one of the markers is what's called a self marker. It actually tells the immune system that your cells belong. These are good cells. So your immune system wanders around the body thinking, they look suspicious. Oh no, they're okay. These are suspicious, I'll destroy them. So if they get into your body, we've got this wonderful way of recognizing self and non-self and destroying non-self, which is really useful. And then we've got two systems that operate together. So not only do we have our blood system to circulate blood and white blood cells in that blood, and lots of antibodies that we make right in our blood, but that all then gets to drain back into our system via what's called a lymph node system. So the antibodies and white blood cells particularly leave the arteries and veins and enter our body cavities in between our cells and go searching for diseases, pathogens, non-self cells. And then they have to get back into the system. So they drain back into the lymph system. And that lymph is a whole lot of little fine vessels, just like veins, basically. They have valves in them, like veins do, because they don't want backward flow. And as you move around with your muscles and moving about, walking about, swinging your arms, then all that stuff gets to drain back into the lymph system. And we have a whole lot of lymph nodes all over our body. And this is where antibodies are produced. This is why exercise and movement is really important. If you're not moving and not exercising, then your lymph doesn't drain properly. And those white blood cells and things you need don't get back into the circulation. So even on cold, horrible days like today, coming into winter with horrible weather, exercise is still critically important, and movement regularly is critically important. So we don't sit all day at the computer, which is very tempting at the moment, to get the stuff flowing back into our systems. Anyway, so our first line of defense is in fact our skin. So, we've got, look at our hands with lovely skin covering. It's basically wrapped around the rest of our body to protect us from what wants to come in. And as long as it is intact, it hasn't been penetrated and cut open, it's actually protecting us. Of course, we all have cuts and grazes and ulcers in our mouth, that sort of stuff, which stops that working quite so well, which is why we cover them over, or we try and make sure they repair fast. And of course, our bodies do repair fast. The skin, once it's cut, will repair really quickly. One of the first responses when you do cut the skin is a whole lot of inflammation and blood and white blood cells and red blood cells and platelets come in to clog it up and kill anything that might be coming in. So our body's really aware of that problem. We also secrete a whole lot of chemicals onto our skin surface, and particularly at those spaces where things can get past. The eyes. This is one of the really big ones for COVID-19. You'll notice the doctors working in the hospitals not only have breathing apparatus masks on to stop things getting in their noses and mouth, they've got goggles plus a shield So they're blocking up this whole area where things can get in. And also stuff gets up your urethral opening through the vagina and anus. These are all openings into the body. So you've got to protect them. So there's a whole lot of chemicals there watching out for pathogens and ready to kill them. Really useful. And some of these chemicals are known as cytokines. These guys signal when they've found damage and cause the immune system to respond the correct way. So we get a lot of inflammation. That's part of the immune response. Interferons. This is a particular type of cytokine that picks up cells that have been infected by viruses. So hang on, guys. We need to attack this cell and kill a body cell because it contains viruses before those viruses get released. So when you're sick, you often lose a lot of body cells that you then replace. And then there's a huge array of things we call complement proteins, which live in the blood, and they kill stuff they don't recognize. You know, it's non-self. It's time to attack that, or put a flag on it for someone else to. So this is what's called the inflammation response. And I won't even try to explain it. But essentially, a pathogen's arrived, and all of these cells suddenly kick off. Right? They're all involved in responding to that pathogen's arrival. Neutrophils, natural killer cells. So I can't remember. T cells, memory T cells, and helper T cells, and killer T cells. We get plasma cells, and they produce memory cells that remember the disease. These guys also pump out piles of antibodies. You get all these other cells like mast cells and things creating the inflammation response. This huge mess takes place, and this macrophage is important. It's recognized non-self, and it's absorbed that attacking pathogen and tells all these guys to get busy. So once that something comes in, our whole body goes into overdrive, which is often why we get really tired when we're sick. We're tired and we run down because our body's spending so much energy dealing with these new cells. So phagocytes and natural killer cells are floating around all the time. And they're just waiting to find things that aren't self, that don't have self markers. And they destroy them. And they'll mark bits of them and release bits of them to let other cells know that what's going on, and a whole lot more cells get involved. So it's this huge response. I've talked about all that, haven't I? I'll pump over that. Having met a disease for the first time, so this is when we actually have a disease, a pathogen causing disease, we create antibodies to an antigen. So the self marker is an antigen. So on our own antigens, we don't make antibodies because they're ours. But when we recognize self markers that aren't ours, so a non-self marker, when a cell is invading, we call those antigens because they cause us to create antibodies. So antigens, short for antibody generator. And the antibodies are made by B cells. These B plasma cells pump them out, and they remember them. So we have memory T cells and memory B cells. So the second time you get sick with that disease, I know this guy, and you pump out antibodies really fast. So the second time you get a disease, you're not as sick. You respond faster, and you get well faster. Most of you probably had chickenpox or been vaccinated for chickenpox, and most winters you'll probably get chickenpox, but you don't realise it. It's over in no time, 24-hour bug, because your body recognises the antigen, makes the antibodies, you deal with it, you might have a day in bed, think you got a head cold or whatever, feeling a bit crap, bit of a virus, it's all over. So this memory is really important, this memory part. We have a range of T cells as well, so B cells and T cells. T cells are made in the thymus gland, hence T cell, or they're not made, they mature there. They have antibodies as well, although antibodies are generally made by B cells, and they're all about causing a increased response, particularly to viruses. So they're really, really handy. B cells, named because they were first found in the bursa of fabricus, sort of a node in the gland in the bird, they mature in the bone marrow. T cells mature later in the thymus gland. They're all made in bone marrow. And these are the ones that specialise in making antibodies and remembering. So they're really useful. And that's probably enough high-level biology there for you for one day, although I've got one more on vaccinations to make. So I'll see you again very soon.